On Saturday, we had a thriller that came down to the wire in the orange and white game. My takeaways and reactions to everything we saw this past Saturday.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Longhorns, the show. Jonathan Davis, your host. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. And on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns, reactions and takeaways to the orange and white game this past Saturday, a thriller 34-35, all of that and more. On today's episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So before we get into what happened on Saturday, I have to explain what happened on Friday on Locked On Longhorns for my YouTube audience. I apologize because I did put an episode out on Friday, but did not realize until Saturday morning that that episode was effectively audio only. I uploaded it to audio. It went on audio just fine. So shout out to my audio listeners, if you heard that episode on Friday. And I uploaded it to YouTube, right? I thought I did everything right, like I do every other day. And I wouldn't say kept checking, but I checked it a few times and realized I didn't have any comments on the video, but I didn't think anything of it. Checked it again Saturday morning. There were still no comments on the video. And I'm like, okay, football video, no comments. That's a little bit weird. Realized it never uploaded on YouTube. So my video episode from Friday never uploaded on YouTube. I apologize for that. It was really just me, talking about everything we learned from the spring and kind of previewing the orange and white game, which would take place the next day. So if you want to go back and listen to it, I would appreciate it. It's on audio only, but nonetheless, just wanted to explain why I did not put an episode out on Friday, or at least it seems that way to my YouTube audience. Watching the orange and white game on Saturday, I had a ton of fun. And normally when you're watching this game, or when I'm watching this game, I'm always in analyst mode, right? I'm always process over results, right? I'm looking to see who's lining up where, right? Who's getting the first team reps, who's getting the second team reps, right? How do the quarterbacks look, right? Their footwork, their timing, their, progressions, all of that, right? Like, I've never really cared about the score of the orange and white game, who was scoring in the orange and white game or the results at the end. But I think the game on Saturday really gave me an opportunity to not only assess everything I was seeing from an analyst perspective, right? But also just enjoy a football game, right? And I found myself at the end, really being excited, in terms of what the outcome was going to be, even though I was rooting for every single player on the field, right? I'm rooting for the offense and the defense at the same time. But I will say this Saturday was the first time that I can remember that I actually sat down and watched the orange and white game, and it felt like, as a fan, I was watching a real football game that was intense at the end. Trey Owens led that game-winning drive to put the orange team up, and then Arch Manning got a chance to come back down the field and take the lead for good, to win the game. So it was just great to see our players back out there in football mode for real for the first time since, that defeat to Washington. And it was great to see a, very entertaining product, because like I said, at the end, I was on the edge of my seat, like we were watching a college football playoff game, and it was the orange and white scrimmage to kick off the 2024 season. Just based on what we saw, there was a lot of good and really not too much bad, right? And that's what you would expect from a very talented football team in Texas, a team that's a legitimate conference championship contender in the SEC and a national championship contender. You saw a lot of talent on the field. When they went to the second unit, you saw a ton of talent. When they went to the third unit, you saw a ton of talent. You saw talent that's ready to, play at the highest level this year and hopefully lead Texas to a natty. And then you saw the talent that will carry this Texas football team over the next 2 to 3 years at the 40 acres. So just an exceptional job of recruiting, an exceptional job of development and coaching at the 40 acres. And we saw a ton of that on display this past Saturday in the orange and white game. The first thing I want to talk about is, before the game, I came in saying Texas may have one of the best quarterback rooms in the country. Not may have, but they may have the best quarterback room in the country. They absolutely have one of the best. I think after watching this game this past Saturday, I think Texas has the best quarterback room in the country, right? Obviously, we know what Quinn Ewers has brought to the table in real live action in college football. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the country last year. Was not great in the orange and white game. Just the offense really didn't get in a rhythm when he was in. Obviously he had that batted ball by Ethan Burke that Alfred Collins caught and took to the end zone for a pick six. But I was a little concerned that the offense under Quinn Ewers really showed no rhythm, especially when we saw the offense under Trey Owens and Arch Manning show a ton of rhythm. And it's just an orange and white game. They have a bunch of time to fix it. And, it's a limited sample size. It could mean nothing, but it could mean something as well, right? And you just want to see your franchise quarterback and Quinn Ewers and all that talent on the offense get something going, right? And they were unable to do that on Saturday. But nonetheless, we know what Quinn Ewers brings to the table. We've seen him do it at the highest level in college football. And that's the leader of your room, right? Then you're talking about a player in Arch Manning, and we saw what he did on Saturday. And then Trey Owens as a true freshman in his first, I don't want to say live game action, right? But that was his first live game action. That's what it was. And he looked really good as well. So Texas, absolutely, undoubtedly, no question in my mind, it's not up for debate, has the best quarterback room in the country. I talked about Quinn Ewers and the lack of rhythm that we saw offensively when he was in the game, albeit very limited opportunity. So it's not just a huge sample size to write home about either, right? But, even though there were a couple throws he probably wants back, I thought that there were also some throws that he made that, were really good throws from Quinn Ewers, whether they were completed or not. He had the sideline throw to Jonte Cook. I thought that was one of the best throws we've seen on the day, right? And something we're not used to seeing from Quinn Ewers is those tight window throws, but he really made a nice throw to Jonte Cook on the sideline where only Jonte Cook could get it. He made a nice play where he stepped up in the pocket and threw the ball sidearm to Isiah Bond, but didn't get rewarded for it because Isiah Bond didn't catch it. So even though there was some inconsistency and even though there were some throws that, he probably wants back from the orange and white game, I also thought Quinn Ewers made some really nice throws in that game as well, right? And I expect him to be really good this season. Arch Manning, it's hard not to marvel at everything that he does, right? But he does everything at a high level. He put that on display on Saturday, throwing for over 330 yards and I think 2 or 3 touchdowns. The floor is high, but the ceiling is even higher, right? From his footwork to his poise, his ability to read the field, make the right read, and throw consistently, his accuracy all over the field, his arm strength to push the ball down the field, not to mention his athleticism. I could see him running a 4.6, 4.7, and really being able to use his legs when he becomes a starter for this Texas football team. The latest edition of the Mannings looks like a Manning. He looks as advertised. He did miss a couple throws to Matthew Golden at the end, but outside of that, he was absolutely flawless on the day. You can't help but salivate at the thought of Arch Manning being your starting quarterback as soon as the 2025 season starts. And hopefully he gets some opportunity this year. I'm going to knock on wood, right? Obviously Hudson Card has had to come in and start games. Malik Murphy has had to come in and start games. I hope Arch Manning doesn't get his opportunity that way. I want to see Quinn Ewers stay healthy and start every game this season. But hopefully we're good enough to blow a few teams out and Arch Manning can get in the game and give us that experience that we got on Saturday and in the Texas Tech game as well. Because when Arch Manning steps on the field, he's electric and usually good things happen for the offense. Trey Owens, true freshman, has been on campus for 2-3 months. And he was really impressive, showing incredible poise for a true freshman. Great footwork. Was really accurate with his throws, especially on third down, converted a couple third and longs. And with 2 to 3 years of development, I think he could be the Texas version of Mac Jones, right? Who we saw under Steve Sarkisian. Obviously, Quinn Ewers is the starter this year. Arch Manning will be the starter next year and maybe for another year after that if he wants to stay in college football for 2 seasons. I don't see why he wouldn't. So that would put Trey Owens in either his 3rd or 4th year potentially as the starter. But based on what we saw on Saturday, he absolutely could be that Mac Jones type of player for this Texas football team because he looked incredible even as a true freshman quarterback. So I came into this weekend saying Texas might have the best quarterback room in the country based on what we saw from Quinn, but especially Arch Manning and Trey Owens. Definitively, I now think that Texas has the best quarterback room in the country. Talking about the running backs, I thought all of the running backs looked good. Coming into the game, I said Texas can go 6 deep in the room. I might have been wrong. We might be able to go 7 deep, right? I wasn't familiar with Kai Wood's game. I've seen him a few times, but he looked really good on Saturday as well. It seems like every time I see him, he's making plays. He's just always buried on the depth chart because he's at running back U, right? But you talk about Cedric Baxter, he looked physical and imposing, right? Still didn't see a ton of make you miss, still didn't see a ton of wiggle, but you don't need it if you're productive with your runs, right? And he caught that screen or caught that little swing out pass and made like 3 people miss and then just trucked somebody, right? And then, of course, Michael Taft, who's just inevitable, made the tackle. But nonetheless, we saw Cedric Baxter really getting physical, imposing his will and putting hits on people, right? We saw Jaden Blue, just one of the most explosive players in the country, electric every time he touched the ball. I thought Savion Red had some really powerful runs. Trey Wisner had a really good run for about 15 to 20 yards, even though Jonte Cook was holding on the play. I thought Wisner looked good. And then Christian Clark and Jarrett Gibson, that's true freshman running backs, right? Whether it was in pass protection, catching the ball, or running the rock, I thought they both looked good and showed promise and looked like they'll be great running backs for us in the future. So I thought it was a great day for the running back room. Overall, the run game was not great. I put a lot of that on the offensive line, but I thought individually all 6 running backs that I mentioned had moments in the game, and even Kai Woods, who would be your 7th running back, made some explosive runs as well. Great day for the running backs, not a great day for the run game. A quick word from our sponsors. and then we get into more of my takeaways and reactions from the orange and white game this past Saturday. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else. Even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. And remember, terms and conditions do apply. All right, talking about the tight end room, didn't see a ton of explosiveness, didn't see a ton of, wow plays from Gunnar Helm. Obviously, he will be your starting tight end this season in opportunities behind Jatavian Sanders. I thought he's looked great and looked explosive at times, especially last year, right? I think he averaged over 16 yards per reception. Didn't see a ton of, just excitement from him in the orange and white game, but, I expect him to be really productive this year. Who I was, excited to see and who caught my eye in the room was Amari Niblack, right? And he's, smaller, really kind of reminds me of another tight end that we brought over from Alabama, even though it didn't work out in the best way, is Jaleel Billingsley, right? Like, he just looks like a wide receiver, like a big, lanky wide receiver when he's running. And I think he has an opportunity, especially behind Gunnar Helm, to make so many plays this season, because you talk about having to account for those running backs, right? You talk about having to account for all of those wide receivers. Then Gunnar Helm is probably going to be your number one tight end, right? So you're talking about Amari Niblack being down at 6th, 7th, or 8th, right, on the pecking order, 6th, 7th, or 8th on the food chain. But in terms of just pure talent, right, he's good enough to be on any team a third or fourth option, right? And you just can't come into a game and game plan for Amari Niblack with everything else that's being thrown at you, right? You don't have time to worry about what Amari Niblack is going to do on the field. When you got to worry about Isiah Bond, Jonte Cook, Ryan Wingo, Cedric Baxter, Jaden Blue, et cetera, right? It's just so much to factor in. So I think he has an opportunity to have a huge year, and I just love the way he moves at the tight end position because, he just looks like a big, lanky wide receiver that can give you some inline tight end play, can give you some blocking. But out there, in space, he looks like a wide receiver and should make some huge plays for this Texas football team this year, especially because, like I said, it's just going to be hard for opposing coordinators and defenses to game plan for him when, like I said, he's about 6th, 7th, or 8th on the pecking order, depending on who you ask, right? Also, Jordan Washington, right? We've been talking about who might be the future of the position at the tight end. Obviously, you can always go in the transfer portal and get a player like Jaleel Billingsley or a player like Amari Niblack. And so maybe it doesn't put as much pressure on you in terms of recruiting at the high school level, like, certain other positions, right? Even though we've been able to get quarterback in the portal, haven't been able to get offensive tackle, but we just lost a player like Peyton Kirkland, who went to Colorado. Best of luck to him. And then we've been able to get edges in the portal and Trey Moore, right? So now I guess that it's become the new norm in college football. Moving forward, you'll probably be able to get any position out of the portal and players at a high level at any position out of the portal. But for the most part, we haven't seen that at the tight end position, right? And so there's been question marks about how we've recruited it out of the high school ranks, right? Because Jordan Washington, I think he ended up a 4-star, but it was a 3-star at the time of his commitment. Will Randall was a 3-star when he committed. Spencer Shannon was a 3-star when he committed, right? And so it's like Sark is saying this is the second most important position on his offense, and we can't recruit a high-level, top 150 player in the country at the position. But when you watch Jordan Washington in his high school tape this season, or you watch Jordan Washington on Saturday before he got hurt in the orange and white game, and he showed you all the potential in the world, right? He showed you that Jatavian Sanders type. He can be a mismatch against every opponent type potential, right? And I think starting next year, Gunnar Helm and Amari Niblack should be your two primary tight ends this year, with Juan Davis making some plays here and there. But I think going into next season, Jordan Washington needs to be a factor on this offense because he showed you already in his first game action on Saturday that he can be a legitimate mismatch at the tight end position week in and week out, regardless of who you play. At the wide receiver position, Isiah Bond did not look as advertised in the first half, but I'm glad that he got the opportunity to play the entire game and then make up for it, right? Because at the start of the game, you're like, this the Isiah Bond that we brought over. And at the end of the game, you're like, yeah, That's the Isiah Bond that we brought over. Really good second half. Hopefully consistency isn't an issue throughout the season. That may have been an issue at Alabama. It was an issue in this game, right? Not being consistent in the first half and then breaking out in the second half. But you saw the potential. You saw the explosiveness, and you saw his ability to take damn near any play to the house, right? And, he's just a walking touchdown, right? Like, you can scheme it up at any point, right? He's a walking touchdown if everything goes right. And that play that he scored on is just one-on-one. Gavin Holmes, I'm going to win my matchup. I'm wide open. You put it in the bucket, we're going to score a touchdown. And that's exactly what happened in the second half. Also made a really nice jumping catch on the right side of the field. Can't remember who threw it. It was probably Arch Manning, since Isiah Bond was in the game, but threw it high, and he went up and made an adjustment and caught it. So there were some plays he would like to have back, some, catches he definitely should have made, but I thought he made two really good catches at the end to give Texas fans an assurance, right? Calm us down and give us an assurance that he's going to have a huge season at the 40 acres. And like I said, every play, he's a threat to take it to the house, right? But when we're talking about the wide receiver position, this is somebody I've been screaming about all spring, because the practice reports have been screaming about him all spring, right? I'm just reacting to what I've read. But I've said all spring practices, right? We keep hearing about Ryan Wingo. We keep hearing about Ryan Wingo. We keep hearing about Ryan Wingo. On Friday, before the orange and white game, I said he will be the 2024 version of Kelvin Banks from 2022 and Anthony Hill from 2023, right? That player that from day one, you just hear about them being different. It doesn't matter that they're a true freshman. It doesn't matter that Ryan Wingo is living in a completely different state, and still getting acclimated to that. From day one, they look like they belong not only on this football team, but they look like they belong in the rotation. And we saw that finally, right? All the practice reports came to fruition on Saturday when Ryan Wingo looked like a true number one wide receiver in his first live game action, the full package already, right? And now he's transitioning from being good. I think he's already good, right? He's already good. He's shown us that he's already good. At the college level, you could put him in a game right now and he could be good for you. I think he's transitioning from good right now to potential great, right? He could be one of the best players ever. I know I'm putting a lot on him, right? But, great power comes great responsibility. I think he's capable of it. He could be one of the best players at that position to ever grace the 40, right? I mean, he looked like a 3-year vet on Saturday, especially that game-winning touchdown he made at the end, just the stutter in the route, his ability to get spacing on that, obviously a great play call as well. But his ability to get spacing on that, his ability to time the route perfectly to keep the defense off balance, and then his ability to track the ball over his shoulder and make an effortless catch, even though he was wide open. Those are just the things that I watch, right? The orange and white game for, like I said, process over results. But damn, the results look good with Ryan Wingo. And, Sark better learn how to utilize 4 wide receivers, because Ryan Wingo cannot sit on the bench this season, right? Like I said, Kelvin Banks, Anthony Hill, you just got to find a way to get him on the field, find a way to get him the ball. And based on what he's shown us, that's not going to be that hard. I don't care who you brought in from the transfer portal. But outside of Ryan Wingo and Isiah Bond, I thought Jonte Cook, DeAndre Moore, and, of course, Thatcher Milton, right, also made really nice plays as well and looked good at the wide receiver position. DeAndre Moore, the long pass that he scored on, was more of a blown coverage, but still it's good to see him making plays. I expect him to be dominant in the slot this year. And, right, Silas Bolden is not on campus yet, so that's another wide receiver that you're adding to the fold who's explosive. So they've done a really good job of recruiting in that room. Now we can see if they can do a really good job for the first time of utilizing the amount of talent that you have in that room. Offensive line-wise, I did not think they did a great job of blocking in the run game. It felt like, really, we've seen this in every orange and white game since Sark has been here. So I don't know, maybe it's strategic at this point, but it just kind of felt like the defensive line, regardless if it was the first or the second unit, was always in the backfield, especially the second unit, right? They just did not look good in terms of run blocking up front, right? So, we'll see if that's an issue throughout the season. I've always said that you can develop themes, good or bad, in the spring. And we heard about them not being able to run the ball in the big part of the field throughout the spring. And then we saw in the orange and white game, they were not able to run the ball in the big part of the field. So, I mean, I don't know. If somebody's telling you the same thing for a month, you might start to believe it. So hopefully the run game, especially inside, is not an issue throughout the season. But I will say that the offensive line, we didn't hear about them blocking well in the run game throughout the spring, especially in the scrimmages. In the orange and white game we actually saw, they did not block well in the run game, especially in the middle of the trenches. Pass blocking wise, I thought they did a great job protecting all game and really gave Trey Owens and Arch Manning time and confidence to go through their reads. Now I know that when Quinn was in the game, the edges were a little turned, you know what I mean, and the pass rush got in the backfield. We saw Ethan Burke get in there and tap that ball to went to Alfred Collins. But for the most part, on the day, I thought, especially with mismatching offensive lines, I thought the offensive line did a really good job at pass protection, especially for our young quarterbacks, right? Because that's, a big mental block, right? Like if you're in the game as a young quarterback and you're constantly worrying about if somebody's coming from the left or right side, it's going to affect your performance. It's going to affect your ability to go through your reads. It's just going to affect you overall at the quarterback position, right? Like the best situation for a quarterback is to have the confidence that their tackles can hold their own on the bookends, right? And because they were able to do that this past Saturday, as well as limiting the pass rush up front, it gave our young quarterbacks the time and the confidence to be able to deliver the ball to our playmakers. And I thought Trey Owens and Arch Manning both did that at a really high level this past Saturday. They also held up long enough for Texas to complete multiple deep passes, right? We saw that at times maybe in 2021 where there were deep passes there, but we couldn't get the ball out, right? Because we were getting sacked or, getting harassed in the backfield, right? Some of these play designs and things that take place down the field take so much time to develop. And I thought the ones that we called up on Saturday, the offensive line did a really good job of protecting for us. And I want to give a shout out to Kyle Flood and AJ Milwee, right? I thought they did a really good job of orchestrating the offense this past Saturday, start giving them that responsibility in the orange and white game. And I thought they did a really good job of play calling, play sequencing, and leading the offense down the field. Nothing to read between the lines there. I am not saying that Sark should be replaced as the play caller or offensive coordinator. I am not saying that at all. I think Sark is the genius, the one pulling the strings, and I want to see him in that position when the season starts. But I did think in a one-game scenario, in a scrimmage, right, AJ Milwee and Kyle Flood looked really good as play callers and play designers. A quick word from our sponsors, and then I get into my defensive notes, what I saw on that side of the ball in the orange and white game this past Saturday. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns brought to you by FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, so getting into the last part of the show, what I saw on the defensive side of the ball in the orange and white game. Of course, the defense gets, just shunned at the end, 4 or 5 minute segment when I spent 20 minutes talking about the offense. But, the offense is the one that sells tickets, right? The offense is the one that gets us going. So I guess this is how it goes, right? It's like me talking for 20 minutes on here about football and then like 3 minutes for the baseball team, right? Like football just moves the needle. All right, so talking about what we saw on the defense, I'm really impressed with what we saw from the edge position. We knew coming into the season that's a position in a group we would have to upgrade, and we heard really all, I don't want to say all offseason, but all spring about different edge players making a difference on this football team, right? And I thought that, based on what we're hearing, this is a room that could probably go 6 to 8 deep, right? And based on what I saw this past Saturday, that confirms my thought process that this room more than likely could go 6 to 8 deep, right? Obviously we know about Trey Moore, what he's done over the last 2 years. Colin Simmons, the all-world prospect. You expect him to be in the fold and be a high-level player sooner than later. Barron Sorrell, a starter the last couple of years at Texas. You know what he brings to the table. Ethan Burke, a starter last year, I think had 5.5 sacks. We know what he brings to the table, right? That's already 4 players I've mentioned, right? Then you got Colson Vasek, who had a sack in the orange and white game this past Saturday. He looks like he's ready and primed after a year of developing his body and his game, right? Then you got Justice Finkley, who's been, a solid player for us for the last 2 years. What's that, 7 right now? I've named 7 players or 6, right? Then you got Cecilia Arcana and other players in that room that you expect to make a difference at some point. So, last year, I thought that we had decent players in the room, but we just didn't make enough of a difference on the field, especially in the type of games that we were playing against Oklahoma, right? Against Washington, some of the best programs in the country. We could not get a pass rush when it mattered the most, right? Even though we were able to do it at a high level in the Alabama game. Probably don't have to worry about that this year, right? I think that not only do you have 2 superstar type edges in Trey Moore and Colin Simmons, but you got 7 to 8 players in the room that you can throw at, opposing tackles and opposing offenses. And I think just being able to throw fresh bodies in that pass rush the entirety of the game gives you an advantage and should give you better play from your edges this season. In terms of up the middle, right? We didn't see a ton of pass rush, and Vernon Broughton didn't play, but I thought that what we saw was promising, especially when you're losing players like Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy. Didn't know what to expect, right? And I thought that, we could watch the Orange and White game on Saturday and just see Cedric Baxter and Jaden Blue just running down their throat. And instead, we saw the opposite, right? They did a really good job of stepping up to the plate, stopping the run game up the middle, really stifling them, and doing a good job of allowing, our linebackers, when applicable, and edges on Saturday to have one-on-one opportunities and get to the quarterback. That's all you can ask for, right? Be space eaters, take up blocks, in the middle, and just not allow people to run up the middle and get easy yardage on you. And I thought they did a good job of that. So I think they still should make it a priority in the transfer portal window. I still think you need to bring in some more bodies and have more competition and opportunities to have a great player in that room. But I really liked what I saw, especially from young players like a true freshman like Alex January, right? He's a two-time state champion next to Colin Simmons for a reason, but he looks like a player that, with more development could be a guy for you in the middle of that defensive line. So was scared coming into the game, was scared coming into the season, still scared coming into the season about the middle of that defensive line. But they did a really good job of quelling some of my concerns this past Saturday. Linebackers and coverage is something that has not been a strong point for us in the Steve Sarkisian era at the University of Texas. You've had good linebackers, right? But in terms of in coverage as a whole, that unit has just not been great. And there were a lot of passing plays over the middle that we saw on Saturday. I won't say that it was all the linebackers' fault. I can't get on here and tell you a specific play that a linebacker gave up, right? I'm just a podcast host watching the Orange and White game 1.5 times, trying to come up with as many takeaways as I can, right? So, like I said, I can't say that any linebacker was particularly bad in coverage or, these are the plays that the linebackers gave up. But there were a lot of plays going across the middle, and those are typically where your linebackers are. And I've watched for 3 years us give a lot of plays up or across the middle where our linebackers should be, right? So hopefully that's something that we can do a better job of this season. Didn't necessarily see it in the Orange and White game. Same thing with the safeties, right? The safeties are in the middle of the field. So if we're constantly getting attacked over the middle of the field, that tells you that our linebackers and safeties probably should be doing a better job in coverage. In terms of at corner on the outside, I think they did a really good job for the most part, even though there were some really big plays given up. Jahdae Barron didn't play in the Orange and White game, so you would expect him to be a part of the football team and provide better coverage than what we saw on Saturday. But like I said, I was fine with the coverage that we saw, right? Especially the amount of pass attempts that they had to defend, the receivers that they're defending, right? And then the offense knowing exactly what the defense is in every time they line up, right? Like I said, I thought they did a really good job of covering some of the best receivers in the country at a high level, right? Gavin Holmes gave up a touchdown one-on-one, but it was to Isiah Bond, right? A lot of people are going to give up that touchdown. Kobe Black gave up a long touchdown one-on-one, but it was to Ryan Wingo. I have a feeling a lot of players are going to give up that touchdown, and the long 75-yard pass to DeAndre Moore was a blown coverage. Now, you hope that when the season starts, the coverage doesn't get blown like that, because there's an opportunity for other teams to out-scheme us the same way that Steve Sarkisian, AJ Milway, and, Kyle Flood did this past Saturday to the defense. But you have the confidence that that wasn't a player just physically getting beat. Like, there was nothing he could do about it. They just lost DeAndre Moore, and unfortunately, he touched his head on the goalpost. But you got plenty of time to make sure that doesn't happen when the games really matter throughout the season. But nonetheless, I thought in one-on-one coverage, the corners did a pretty good job outside of all the deep passes we saw. And I have to attribute some of that to the pass rush not getting there as well, because it takes time for those plays to develop outside of Gavin Holmes and Kobe Black just getting beat off the line. But Ryan Wingo and Isiah Bond are two of the best wide receivers in the country. At the safety position, Michael Taft he's just still inevitable, right? He might be my favorite player on the football team now, like outside of Bert Harbin. He has worked his way up into like my top 5 at least. Like, I just love Michael Taft. Never bought a college jersey. Michael Taft might be the first one. I'm so serious. Like, he just gets me going, right? Like, even he gets trucked by, Cedric Baxter and still makes the tackle. Like, he's just one of those types of players that you need, right? He's like Brock Cunningham, but he's like really playing at a high level for the Texas football team. Like, glue guy, but like, we really need him. He might be our best safety. And I don't know how. Like, I don't know what voodoo he does, right? Because we could bring in Ed Reed out of the transfer portal and Michael Taft would still be our best safety. So, hey, man. I'm glad we got Michael Taft on our side and we don't go against him, right? Nonetheless, I really don't have a definitive judgment about the safety room. Like I said, a lot of passes given up over the middle. Arch Manning threw for over 300 yards. It seemed like Trey Moore got whatever he wanted, and Quinn Ewers probably could have got whatever he wanted if receivers were catching the ball and he had more time to throw it. So even the 4th-string quarterback, I don't even remember his name, but he got in and made some plays. So, you know what I mean? I remember he threw a touchdown to Reese Beauchamp walk-on, who was my first ever guest on Locked On Longhorns in terms of actual, like, a player, I think. So that was cool for Reese to see him score a touchdown as a preferred walk-on. But, I mean, even he was scoring touchdowns in the middle of the safeties, right? So it's like, I don't know what to say about the safety room. Can't say that they were definitively bad or anything like that. I don't think they played bad. I'm not here to say that. But when you give up the type of passing plays that we gave up on defense, right? And when your quarterbacks, when I'm talking about how great they were in the orange and white game, they had to go against somebody, right? And so hopefully that safety play, that middle of the play, middle of the field defense, right? Middle of the field passing defense, whether it's linebacker, safeties, whoever, hopefully that gets cleaned up before big games this season. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, all week. We'll be talking about the orange and white game, the NFL draft, and your favorite college baseball team. Hook 'em and peace. Thank you to the YouTube comment that reminded me that I got away from that. Promise I'm going to do it again. Hook 'em. Peace.